Global organizations. World Trade Organization or WTO. Need for formation of WTO. Failure of 8th round of GATT held in Uruguay at Punta del Este in 1986, known as Uruguay Round, gave birth to the new organization and a legal entity called as World Trade Organization or WTO. Once again, India became the founder member of the World Trade Organization also. Now let us see how WTO is supporting foreign trade. Unlike United Nations Organization or UNO, all members of World Trade Organization have equal voting and negotiating rights. It provides a framework for operations, implementation and administration of multilateral trade agreements. Objectives of WTO. Though the objectives of World Trade Organization are similar to GATT, they have wider scope and the powers to enforce its decisions. The objectives emphasize on creation of global free trade environment among member countries. The World Trade Organization enable members to enjoy higher income through growing output levels by sharing trade gains. The objectives of WTO are: first, to help to remove or reduce barriers to international trade agreement with the member countries. Second, to achieve global economic development through optimum utilization of world resources. Third, to increase market share of developing countries through assistance in their development efforts. Fourth, to follow a non-discriminatory policy for all member countries. Fifth, to act as dispute settlement machinery as and when disputes arise between member countries. Functions of WTO. The WTO, being a legal entity, acts as an advisory as well as regulatory body. It performs several functions in order to control the international trading environment. They are: first, to guide the member countries in multilateral trade. Second, to handle dispute settlement with approval rules and procedures laid down by WTO. Third, to scrutinize regularly the national trading policies of member countries. Fourth, to implement multilateral trade agreements and legal instruments approved at the Uruguay Round. Fifth, to participate in global policy making by seeking help from International Monetary Fund or IMF and World Bank or IBRD as and when necessary. WTO provisions related to international trade are now similarly applicable to agriculture, which was brought within the fold of GATT in the Uruguay Round 1986 to 1993 of multilateral trade negotiations or MTNs. The World Trade Organization's Agreement on Agriculture AOA. The World Trade Organization's or WTO Agreement on Agriculture or AOA was put into practice in 1995 after the Uruguay Round of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade or GATT. The WTO agreement focused on reducing trade barriers and was the first codification of global rules for agricultural trade. Developed world agricultural subsidies remain the largest point of contention, along with the resulting competitive disadvantage faced by developing countries. WTO and Indian agriculture. It was expected that WTO would create a free trade environment, but it was not 100% successful. Indian agricultural produce could be exported in much larger quantity because of two reasons. First, reduced tariffs may reduce prices of farm products. And second, India has low labor cost advantage as compared to many developed countries. There were two major obstacles in creation of free trade area. First, high subsidies provided by EU or European Union and US to their farmers as domestic price support. And second, developed countries also give direct export subsidies to their farmers. These two obstacles halted free trade environment implementation in true sense. Effect of WTO regime at a glance. India was exporting over 3 times of our agricultural imports during pre-WTO period. India's imports and exports both increased during post-WTO period over pre-WTO period. According to a study by Dr. S.K. Dhage, during pre- and post-WTO period, India's imports grew faster than exports due to liberalization under WTO. The gap between the value of imports and exports is narrowing after the WTO regime started functioning. The exports of Indian agricultural produce could not grow at expected rate as developed countries were not ready to reduce their subsidies. They were not ready to proceed further in trade negotiations as well. In order to fetch full advantage of WTO, Indian farmers must be encouraged to reduce costs of production and increase exportable surplus. India must adopt dynamic policies for further improvement. This may be achieved through alliance of developing nations, which would pressurize the developed world to reduce their subsidies. Application of WTO provisions on agriculture involves many contentious issues and is an area of serious concern for developing countries which are primarily agrarian economies. Moreover, the world, despite growing interdependence and integration, is highly heterogeneous with regard to levels of development. This heterogeneity is very much noticeable when we compare the agricultural sector of developed and developing countries. To summarize, India is constantly improving in global trade environment. It has contributed as founder member of GATT as well as WTO. Failure of GATT gave birth to WTO as a legal entity to develop and regulate global free trade environment. Implementation of WTO regime was unable to bring about drastic changes in Indian agricultural sector, which is the backbone for the Indian economy. But it has surely given a helping hand to develop both Indian agricultural imports and exports in a quantitative manner.